Welcome to Girlbye, the only podcast on the internet bringing the queer conversation to the so-called norm. Today, we've got somebody that you have probably seen making the best house videos in the Atlanta area. Somebody who you should probably reach out to because they have the connections to some of the most beautiful houses in the Atlanta area. Josh, welcome to Girlbye. How are you doing today?
I am so good. Thank you for that intro. How lovely.
Yes, we do our research here at Girlbye. And also I follow some of your videos, which make me actually laugh. And
We have some really cool houses, ranging from really contemporary to more traditional to cabins up in the Blue Ridge area. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's one of the best jobs in the whole entire world.
yeah,
So
so to take us back into the beginning of your journey, when did you officially understand that you were part of the queer community?
yeah, so I'm born and raised here in Georgia, to a Southern family. I always knew I was different. I can remember really diving into the church and being like, I want to have a sense of community. I didn't know that was going to be the queer community. I kind of dug into the church because I was like, I just want to be fixed. And that's where you went to get fixed, where I grew up. So I would just pray that I would be different, and be fixed. And it wasn't until my family was watching a TV show called Big Brother. And they had Marcellus was on it. And it was the first time I saw someone and was like, oh my God, that's what I am. I'm like him. I still didn't really know what gay was, but it was the first time I was able to identify what I saw myself as.
Awesome. What about that experience on Big Brother did you connect with?
I had always been looking for what made me different. Why am I different? Why do I sound different? Why do I feel like I'm different on the inside? And it was kind of like I saw his soul. I kind of saw myself in him. I didn't see him making out with a man. I didn't see him getting married. I didn't see any of that. I just saw someone. I was able to see who they really were for a person. And I can remember my family talking about it. My family had gay friends. And so I thought coming out for me was going to be super easy, because they had gay friends. It was going to be just a normal thing. I thought my parents would kind of be excited. They weren't. I'm surprised. So we talked about it. And I remember when we talked about it after watching Big Brother, they would say things like, yeah, people are gay. It's totally fine. People are different. Unless it's their kid. And then it gets a little hairy.
Yeah. Things that happen outside the home versus things that happen inside your home can be two very different reactions that you can receive to certain things. It's really eye-opening to know that, like, just because your parents in the street might be a little bit more open to other people, that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, behind closed doors. And I think a lot of the time with the perception of what our parents have for kind of what we should become, that kind of messes up with what they're comfortable with. And so maybe that kind of rocks the cradle a little bit with the brain. When did you officially kind of label yourself as part of the queer community?
Yeah, so I would say about 6, I knew I was gay, after seeing Big Brother with my family. I shouldn't be watching Big Brother at 6, but that's the type of home I was raised in. What are you going to do? Parents of the year. But it wasn't until high school that I really decided this is who I was, decided this is how I was going to live my life. I knew who I was. This is how I was born. This is how I was wonderfully made. But it wasn't until I was ready to accept it until high school. Up until then, it was me planning a life of fear and a life of lies and a life of, I thought I was going to be a pastor and I was going to have a wife and kids. All of that kind of came crashing down when I was like, no, I don't want to live a life of lies. So I came
Yeah.
out in my junior year of high school. Everybody kind of knew. I told my sisters first. My younger sister is a year younger than me. I didn't want her finding out at school. I didn't think it was fair for her to find out at school. So I told her. But then I felt like it wasn't fair for one sister to know and not the other sister to know. So I ended up telling the other sister. And she did the whole crying thing and life is going to be so hard and blah, 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 blah. And I guess it was more hard for her. a couple weeks later decided that she was having a really bad day at work. So, I was to tell my parents that I was gay, or she was going to do it for me because that was going to make her day better. So that's kind of how I came out. We've now made up from there, but there was a lot of resentment from that.
Yeah.
I got kicked out right away. Lived with a good friend of mine and his family until I was able to get an apartment on my own in my junior year of high school.
Wow. What was your first kind of thought process in being told that you have to get out to like finding somebody to accept you to like go there, but like in that middle time frame, what's running through your mind?
Well, I had at that point I was in the restaurant industry, so I had bought my first car, all on my own. In that moment, my parents took the car away from me because it was in their name because of insurance purposes. So I just
Hmm.
started walking, and I had my own cell phone at that time, and I was like, I have to call someone and tell them, like, what am I like? I'm still a kid. So the only person I could think to call was my grandmother. And I called and I was crying and I said, I just got kicked out. And she kind of was like, for what now? Because she knew my parents were a little crazy. And I told her I was gay. And she was like, oh, baby, we've known for years. She was so excited. She was in Wisconsin, but her sister lived about 20 minutes from us. And she came in. So my great aunt came and picked me up and took me to a restaurant in Atlanta named Joe's on Juniper. It used to be a gay restaurant. Now they tore it down and built a skyrise. Yeah, that day I ended up going out to a gay restaurant to celebrate me coming out, which was really neat.
You know, I find it really interesting that in doing this podcast series and talking to a lot of people, there's so many grandparents that really step up to the plate. And I know, like, for a lot of us, we probably like start to think like if our parents aren't going to be accepting, our grandparents are probably even less accepting
Yeah.
of the situation. And I have found where like a lot of grandparents are like stepping up to the plate. They're the ones that are like, your parents have been living with blinders. We have seen
Yeah.
this one for years.
That's
Um,
exactly how it was. Yeah.
yeah, so I find it to be so interesting in that, and like my grandmother was my rock. I mean, that was the only person that I ever told that I was gay, and immediately she was like, "Okay, like, was this a conversation we needed to have? Like, are we gonna get back to like doing what we were doing? Like, this
Yeah.
is weird."
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was kind of definitely eye opening. So when you get to live this new place and start being able to be more authentically yourself, from that point moving forward, how do you feel like you changed from your like day to day self?
I feel like the world kind of opened up a little bit more. I felt like like it says in Amazing Grace, that first hour that you believe is like the biggest. I think I was the gayest I ever had been within that first like year of coming out. I needed everybody to know. So it was the first time ever I was able to like kind of live my own life.
Yeah,
So it was kind of really, really neat. I started dating right away. I worked at a macaroni grill and ended up meeting some guy, but he had a boyfriend. And I ended up hooking up with him, but I didn't know he had a boyfriend. So we like dated for a little bit. We were hooking up. And it was Thanksgiving, and he was like, hey, I want you to meet someone. Okay, cool, 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 cool. So I go over to his house, and he's like, this is my boyfriend. We've been together a year and a half. And I was like, it was like the weird way he like told me. And it's not in today where like everybody's poly or open, or it was like we're not
yeah,
gonna say anything. So it was really, really awkward. I continued to sleep with him. Um, but then the boyfriend called me like 6 months later and was crying because he had found out that his boyfriend was cheating on them with me. So I ended up comforting the boyfriend and sleeping with him too. And then I found out it was all a game. They all knew. So, yeah, it was pretty messy. That was my first relationship.
that's terrible.
Yeah.
One thing that I am trying to get people to really understand in their first relationships is like really taking the time to understand what it is that you want to see for yourself in like your first relationship goals. Because I feel like a lot of us, um, when you are closeted for so long and you're like hiding who you are, the moment you get to be your authentic self, you kind of go to like the other extreme. And
Yeah.
like you said, like You're like the gayest you can be. The first person that says that they love you, you are now falling in love with.
Yeah, you're gonna be with
Um,
forever. Yeah.
yeah, you're like jumping in and you're like, yeah, we're gonna do this, and like you didn't even learn how to douche, but you're like, sure, I'll bottom. Like, you know what I mean? It's like a
I don't
whole
think I was there yet, but
experience.
he was.
But it's like this whole experience. So being making sure that like you just as a new person coming into this queer space, making sure that like you take a second, like really take a breather in being yourself, because it is so liberating to open up and like feel that weight lifted off of you, that you don't have to hide who you are, that I feel like we just go.
100% agree.
So, how did you feel like it was being in your hometown, like just in general, like in school and stuff? Were you ever really bullied or any of that? Or were people more accepting?
Well, I'll tell you, I had a really good group of friends. I kind of grew up with the rednecks, which was surprising because I'm not a redneck. But I was a wrestlerette. So all of my girlfriends, boyfriends were all wrestlers. So I would just go hang out with the wrestlers. The wrestlers were the first ones to have my back. When people started bullying me for coming out and being gay, I had like the head wrestler come up and had my back and was like, if anybody has a problem with it, they can come talk to me. So I was pretty lucky there. But then it was that I graduated high school in 2007. So it was right at the beginning of being gay kind of became cool. So I had a lot
Yeah.
of people who were never going to be my friend come up and be like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? Do you want to hang out? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, if you weren't my friend before, you're not going to be my friend after. Now I'm in real estate. So if you want to be my friend, I'm looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. I'm there. But yeah, so it was different how the people who I didn't expect to have my back, or the people I thought were going to be the most judgmental, actually had my back. The wrestling team actually helped me move out of my house. And it was neat to see them really surround me and just be there for me.
And they all knew you before you came out, right?
They all knew me before
So,
we came out. Yeah.
do you think that that had like an impact on the way that they kind of stood by you? Do you think it's because beforehand they didn't really have a judgment and
Yeah,
like they just liked you as a person?
absolutely. So they always had my close friends always had my back. Like my close friends were the ones that were like, he is absolutely not gay. And if you think he's gay, you're gonna have to talk to us. And then when I came out, they were like, he absolutely is gay, and if you have a problem, you need to come through. Like they had me either way,
Yeah.
and they were willing to like to fight. My best friend Becca, she's still crazy, but she always has my back. I did an interview a few years ago after we had our child, and it was a national magazine, and they told us like when you do this magazine you're going to have people do really really ugly comments, and I didn't read any of them. I didn't read any of them until I did, and it was like mean comment, my best friend's response, like she's like, I'll beat your ass out. Like I'm like, girl, like let it go, let it go. But she's still that way, and I love that for her.
She now became employed of just answering comments from mean people.
Absolutely.
We love a good ride or die friend. Those are
Yeah,
the people that
yeah,
we need around us.
she's my ride or die forever.
Yeah. How has your relationship with your family changed? I know, like you said a little earlier, your siblings were pretty accepting in a way, but like with your parents and stuff like that, how has life changed since then to now?
Absolutely. So I didn't speak to my parents for probably a year and a half or 2 years. They showed up at my high school graduation, and at some point they were just like, we love you. We want you in our life. And then it was one of those experiences I'm sure a lot of people have gone through. Well, you can be gay, just don't be gay around us. And then it was, okay, that's not going to work. So you can be gay and your friend can come around. And I'm like, no, he's not my friend. He's my boyfriend. Then it was like, okay, you can be gay and your boyfriend can come around, just we're not going to tell anybody. I'm like, everybody knows. So it was just this,
Yeah.
and it's the strangest thing. I ended up meeting my husband at 19, so probably about 2 to 3 years after I came out. And when they met my husband, they were in love with him, right? Like they were just in love with him. Everything went away. Like all the them being uncomfortable, everything went away. So I really equate it to a little bit has been being an incredible person. So,
I think that that's huge because I truly believe that a lot of it is their own perception on people. And ultimately, when you get to know somebody and you think that they're genuinely a good person, aside from whatever their, sexual orientation is or whatever their identity is, when you meet somebody, even if it's a trans person or whatever, it's a person's personality that you
yeah,
like.
I
So
100%
it's
agree.
hard to kind of hate somebody that's just a good person. In this time frame from you meeting or at that time would have been boyfriend to getting married, what was that like what's that journey look like?
So I was 19, he was 28. I also thought that was going to be another big thing. Like my parents were going to be like, "Why are you dating someone so much older?" And I love that, like 28 being like, "Oh my god, he's so old." Now being 35, being like, "Gosh, that's so young." I ended up meeting my husband at Atlanta Pride. He was on the Atlanta Pride committee. I ended up getting stood up at Pride, my first Pride. At this point, my parents were good with it. My dad lent me his Tom Tom. Do you remember Tom Toms? Do you even know what that is? It's like a
No.
portable navigation device, like a phone that doesn't make phone
Oh,
calls,
like a Garmin.
like a Garmin. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Another brand.
Yeah.
So I drove down to Atlanta from where my little town, about 35 minutes outside the city, and I got stood up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, people get raped and killed in Atlanta. I cannot be here." But all I knew how to do was like volunteer. So I was like, "Well, I've made it down here. I'm just gonna volunteer." So this is when it gets a little cheesy. I saw my husband across the room, and I was like, "Oh my god, I think I love that guy." I was like, I want to be with that guy for the rest of my life. I know that sounds so dumb, but that's how it kind of was. So I ended up meeting him
Yeah.
that night. Um, I would love to tell you he took me on like a lovely date, and all this stuff, but he actually took me to McDonald's. And I hooked up with him the first night and never left. So he still keeps saying he's waiting for me to leave, but I'm not going anywhere. So
Yeah. Love at first sight
love at first
of the
sight.
McChicken.
No, it was a Big Mac, and what happened was he took me, but I was a Southern Belle, so of course I couldn't eat a full Big Mac by myself. So I ate like half of it, and like very like politely closed the box and like sat it at the top of the trash can. Woke up in the middle of the night, like climbed over him and got the box out of the trash can and ate the rest of the Big Mac because I was so fucking hungry. Um, yeah,
That sounds like a very well planned out. I'm
yeah.
such a lady.
I'm such a lady. Still am.
Yeah. Then you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth and everything like you just woke
Exactly.
up like
I
that.
already had my makeup on.
Living. I find it very interesting. What triggered you to decide to officially get married?
Well, my husband had been being 28 and so much older than me. He had been in a lot of relationships. I knew, well, year one, I thought he was gonna propose to me. Like I really thought he was gonna propose to me, and he did this big thing about I have something special for you and blah 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 blah. He ended up giving me a Shutterfly book, and I still hate the Shutterfly book to this day because I thought it was going to be a ring. Um, but we didn't get married. We didn't get engaged right away. We didn't get married right away. We ended up getting engaged year 4, married year 6, and this year is our 10-year wedding anniversary. So we've been together 16 years. Um, so with that, you asked me something, but I don't even know what you asked me.
What made you decide to like officially get married?
You know, I was a gay in the South, and all my girlfriends around me were getting married. So like that was just, and we were a straight couple that just happened to be gay. We were doing what all the straight people were doing, so we just did it.
Yeah.
I wanted a big Southern wedding, like that's what I wanted. I wanted a big Southern wedding, but that was the year that the Supreme Court made gay marriage legal. So in the state that I'm in Georgia, it wasn't legal at the state level, but it was legal federally. So we had already had a deposit down on the place we were going to get married and realized if we were going to do this, we probably should do it and make it legal. So we ended up getting married in Niagara Falls, Canada, which is legally got married in Niagara Falls, New York. In my family, on my mom's side, my mom's brother is a Lutheran pastor, and he has married every single one of my cousins. My older sister, my younger sister, is actually the only one that hasn't been married by him, and he still brings it up to this day. So we wanted him to marry us. We were the first gay couple that he's ever married, not because he wasn't for it. He just wanted the first one to be special.
Yeah.
So we got married on 4th of July, 2014. So we got married, and then we ended up, my uncle ended up marrying like 3 other gay couples that weekend. He was like, I've been waiting to marry gay people, but you had to be the first. So
That's awesome. He was
and I
booked and busy that week.
booked him busy. At that point, my parents walked me down the aisle. My younger sister flew in from, at that point lived in Phoenix. She was pregnant and flew in. My older sister, the one that pushed me out of the closet, did not show up because she was going through a divorce, and she felt like that was more important, but whatever. I told her she's not allowed to come to the vow renewal. I always said I wanted that big Southern wedding. So I'm getting it. My husband said that if we're still together at year 10, that I could have my big Southern wedding. So July 4th this year, I'm doing my big Southern wedding.
I love it.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
I That's the other thing about me is that for myself, a wedding will be kind of ridiculous. My mom is a huge supporter of me and everything I do. She watches every episode of this podcast.
Oh, I love it.
And yeah, and she's asked me like if I had a wedding. And I said my biggest problem is that I do want a wedding, but I want a ridiculously large wedding with a theme. And like I want to write in the invitation, if you do not want to come as a theme, don't come.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
my mom's like, well, that's a little mean. And I'm like,
No, it's
but
my day.
it's the truth.
People saying like, oh, it's 4th of July. Like, we already have plans. And I'm like, I promise you, your plans are going to be nothing compared to this event, right? Like, this is an event not to miss. So if you're not going like, if you want to go watch your own fireworks, we're going to have more. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be better.
Right.
It's going to be so gay. So.
Yeah. And that's how I felt about like, if I ever have a wedding, it's going to be, if you miss it, you're going to be upset that you see all these photos and you've missed it.
Yep. I agree.
And all you had to do was go buy an outfit that fit the theme,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But that's what happens when we're gays.
Truly, truly, truly.
So before you get into this relationship, you first come out and you have your first dating experience. That ends. What was next? How did you start dating after that? Did you date after that? Or was it kind of like you bumped into this guy at Pride and that was the end of that?
So yeah, I was always like a dater. Like I was a serial dater. I dated lots of people. I dated like 4 people. But I like to be in a relationship. This was before like Grindr and Scruff, and we had Adam for Adam and like gay.com and those types of things. And I guess people did hook up at that time, but I was like a young gay, so I didn't really know what like the cruising scene was. Like I didn't really know what cruising was. I didn't know what kinks really were. I just knew like you met someone, you went on a date, maybe you hooked up. Like that's kind of all I really knew. So fast forward, a decade, I know what all those things mean now. Yeah, so I was kind of like, if I was going to hook up with someone, I needed to be in a relationship with them.
Yeah. Did you think that growing up in a smaller town is why you didn't learn a lot about like these other hookup culture type things? Or do you think it was just like not being around like a lot of gays?
No, absolutely. I think that I didn't know a lot of gay people, so I built the way you hook up and the way you cared for people and the way you dated based on what was going on around me. And that was a very traditional style. Like I can tell you the guy, like the first time I got kissed by a guy, and it wasn't sexual. He like met me and was like, hey, and gave me a kiss. Like his name's Josh. He lives in Vegas. But I still remember that because that's what I thought love was. Like that was like, oh my gosh, that guy kissed me. How hot. When it was actually just like what gay people do now just to say hi, Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, for sure. So when you're thinking about yourself in your coming out time frame, being kind of forced out the closet, and then, dealing with moving out and all that stuff. What would you have told yourself as advice during that time frame?
Oh my gosh, do you want me to start crying? No, I'm not. I'm not gonna cry. If I could look back and tell myself anything, it would be like, your childhood has fucking sucked. Like, your parents aren't good parents. It sounds really bad, but you're gonna find out what love is. Just wait, and you're gonna be able to provide the love that you should have had in the future. And this is hard, but it will be well worth it. Like, just wait, because I have such an incredible life. I have such a lovely family, and we're our biggest supporters. So that's what I would say is just wait. It gets so much better.
Yeah. So, when did you decide to have children?
So Britt and I always discussed it. My husband's name's Britt, and we've always discussed it. And he kind of said he wasn't really into kids. And my mom had lupus, and my mom was getting a little bit ill. Britt had started coming around to the idea of, okay, maybe we could have kids, and then I get what I want in my relationship. So I kind of pushed it along. My mom was getting older. We had just gotten married. His mom had just passed, and he was ready. He was ready to start a family. So we started the adoption process, and we went down the route. Hunter's 9, so we started 11 years ago, I would say. 10 years ago. It was just after we got married. And surrogacy was only what very rich, famous people did. It wasn't even, gay people did it at the time, but it was like Elton John, right? Like, it wasn't like
Yeah.
gays, which I'm not a normal gay. So we started the adoption process. We also felt like he's from like South Louisiana. I'm from Georgia. Like, we don't really care about our bloodline going on. So, that's why we kind of started it and kind of how it got started.
Can you kind of tell people a little bit about kind of how that process went? Was it
Absolutely.
difficult?
Absolutely. So we started the process. We went through an organization that you had to pay money into. You did, they did like background checks and like home studies, and they like built a whole profile for you, kind of like a dating website for a family to like find a kid for a birth mom. And then during that process, I was in real estate at the time. My loan officer calls me. I'm drunk in a pool, and he's like, I was at an open house. I can remember being at the open house, and he calls and he's like, I found your baby. And I'm like, what? um, and he had a friend of a friend of a friend's sister who was placing their child for adoption. It was at the very, very, very beginning of the process. I said that I wanted a little girl. I wanted to adopt from birth. I wanted to be at the hospital. I wanted to name the child. I wanted all that, all those things. And I learned that the universe kind of has its own way of doing things. I came home and told my husband, like, hey, got this phone call. He's like, we don't even have our home study back yet. We like, even if we want to make this work, we can't make this work. And he kind of said, let it go. If it's meant to be, it will come back. About 2 months later, I went to the mailbox and had our home study. And that night got a call that that child was being placed. And if we were going to be in the ring for it, we needed to make the decision within like a couple days. So within a week, my family came around us and helped us get the house ready. We were off to Michigan, and we adopted our son. My grandmother, who I talked about earlier, lived in Wisconsin, and my mom's siblings and all my cousins live in Wisconsin as well. So I met my son in Detroit, Michigan on a Friday, had to leave him with his birth mom, and we were getting placement on Monday. So it was, okay, sit in a hotel room and just wait for Monday, or go do something. So my family in Wisconsin did a big surprise baby shower for us. And it was absolutely lovely. And then that Monday we got placement.
Well, definitely congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I find it to be amazing when people can extend their families, and definitely when we are adopting kids, it is so huge at really paying attention to the fact that a lot of these kids that end up in the adoption system are not getting placed, or they get placed and people are not taking care of them and loving them the way they should. So seeing people that genuinely just want to grow their family and love somebody, it's really, really touching. So thank you for that.
You're
And
so
thank you
welcome.
for really doing that.
He's
How
incredible.
has it been?
Oh, he's the coolest kid. Like, so he's 9. He's going into 4th grade. His godparents live in South Florida. So during the summer, he spends a couple weeks down there. So school was out last Thursday. And today he's at NASA with his uncles, godparents' uncles. So he's at NASA, and then he will be Disney next week. And he'll be down in South Florida until the end of June. And then he's coming back up. I have a drag show that I'm doing, and he tries to come to all of my shows. And then we have our vow renewal on the 4th. He is so cool. He's so funny. My husband's really into video games, and he's a little bit of an introvert. My husband's a writer and a dean at a local college here in Atlanta. So he gets the really like smarts and all of that from my husband, but he can set a table like no one else. He is so good at entertaining. He's a break dancer. We'll have like a party at the house, and he's like, "Dad, do you need me to like break dance?" Like, he's so damn cute. He has his own hashtag, Life According to Hunter. And he really makes sure, he's like, "Dad, how many views? How many views does that post have?" I'm like, "Hunter, slow down." We had the
I'm gonna
chance.
need to go follow him.
Oh my god, you have to. It is he's so funny. We had the chance, I can't say which one yet, but we had the chance of doing a TV show a couple weeks ago that's on a national network, and that will be coming out in the fall. And we had 5 days of shooting, and he loved it. Like, the crew was so amazing, and they let him play with the cameras, but he like they would be like, "Okay, you need to redo this," and he's like, "Okay, I got this." Like, he was just like a little like it was so much fun. It was so much fun. The
He
experiences,
was living.
yeah, he lives like he is. The first time I went on an airplane was to see my grandmother in Wisconsin in like middle school. Hunter has been in more countries than any kid I know. We love to travel. We want to give him experiences that we never had.
Right.
There was one time we were going to Boston for Martin Luther King Day weekend. And he's like, at this point, he's like 4. He's pulling his suitcase to the airport, and he's like, "Dad, do you have my passport?" And we were like, "Baby, we're going to Boston. Like, slow down." Like he loves to travel, and he now at 9 flies by himself down to South Florida, and it's like he's not scared. He's been on over 100 flights. He's everything I wish I would have been.
And that's awesome. It's awesome that you're able to give that to him. You know what I mean? I find it to be so interesting how a lot of us, growing up with parents that grew up in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s time frame, life was just so different.
Yeah,
And so being able to kind of give our kids that like ability to do crazy things and like things that we never thought was accomplishable
yeah.
is amazing. I know for me growing up, I thought leaving the country was like out of this planet. So, my first time leaving the country and like really going far and stuff like that, I thought was just amazing. And being able to do that at such a young age helps feel young people to want that ability to go like learn other cultures, see other people, experience these other things that you don't necessarily get to experience behind a screen at home or any of that kind of stuff.
I also think it pushes other people. Like, my little sister, I can remember the first time we travel every Christmas Day. So, what I didn't tell you is my parents were a part of my life. My mom struggled with addiction and alcoholism. So at some point after having Hunter, we decided that it was best for my parents not to be in my life. So we made the decision that on Christmas, when we would be around family, we were going to take a family vacation. So we would travel every Christmas Day, and we would go to Mexico or Dominican or wherever, just so we could sit on the beach and have a good time. The one thing I'm really proud of is how compassionate and loving Hunter is. I remember having the conversation with him that we're traveling and Santa's coming in the morning and then we're going to get on a airplane. He was like so concerned, like, why are people working on Christmas? And I'm like, well, the world doesn't stop because it's a holiday. And he was like, so like the flight attendants and the pilots, they have to work and they're not with their family. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, Dad, we got to do something for them. And I'm like, what are we going to, what? And he was like, we're going to go get gifts. We're going to go get gifts for them. He made me do the research of who was working our flight. He needed to know their names. He needed to know all the flight attendants. He needed to know the pilots. And he did handwritten cards, candy and gift cards for everybody. And he still does it to this day. Through real estate, we have some connections at Delta. And we're able to find out who exactly is on the flight when it comes to the crew. But that's all on his own. Like these are things that he's just such a loving, kind little kid, which I love.
That is so beautiful. And we know that these people don't want to work. You know what I mean? They're getting
Yep.
stuck working. And
Yep.
so I bet you it brings so much joy to those
Yeah.
people, even for just a short period of time. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's amazing. So what made you go into real estate?
Absolutely. So I told you a little bit earlier that I was in the restaurant industry. I had been in the restaurant industry for years and years and years. I worked at this like high-end boutique restaurant in Atlanta. You said you're not from Atlanta, but you may have heard of this restaurant. It's Chili's Bar and Grill. I don't know something about their baby back ribs. I worked at Chili's.
I only know their chicken wonton tacos.
So So I was a bartender at Chili's, and this mean old lesbian. God, I hope she doesn't watch this because she wasn't old at the time. She's old now, but came and sat at the bar. She would sit at the bar every week, and she was the one that would sit at the bar, drink Chardonnay with ice, and then tell us to like turn down the sports game because she was trying to enjoy her meal at the bar. And one day she asked me if I was going to be a 75-year-old bartender. And I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, my goal is to be a Real Housewife of Atlanta. My husband had a decent job, right? Like I was like on my way. She said, no, you have to make it on your own. Tomorrow you're going to meet with my broker. And I was like, what's a broker? She was like, I'm a real estate agent. You're going to meet with my broker. So the next day I met with her broker and it changed my life. I fell into real estate. Never did I think I would be in real estate. I tried college for a few years. I was like, this isn't for me. This is boring. And got into real estate and it's been so exciting. So I just celebrated 15 years. My operations manager has all these like stats. I think I've done like 15 years, over 1,000 homes and like over 151 million in sales or something crazy. I don't even know. She tells me, I just do what she tells me to do.
Awesome. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
15 years. I feel like, being in the sales space is never easy, but it is funny how a lot of people that end up in the sales space come from bartending or
Yep.
waitressing or waitering and things like that. A lot of those, and I think it's a charisma thing. It's the ability to just talk to people and
Yep.
connect with people quickly. That makes it really
Absolutely.
interesting. So, what made you decide to do drag?
Yeah, so I always loved drag. I always loved the thought of drag. So the first time I had an opportunity to do it was to give back. The first place I ever did a show was actually at Chili's. Everybody's like, what? So Chili's in September does the where you color a pepper and it goes to childhood cancer in Jude's hospital. And I was in charge. I always get leadership roles no matter where I go because I don't know how to say no. So I was in charge of raising money for St. Jude's. And I had an idea. I was like, why don't we do a drag show? Why don't we close the Chili's early and do a drag show? Like, and I went to my GM at the time and he was like, okay. So like literally in Stone Mountain, Georgia, we had a drag show and I had so much fun getting dressed up and we raised like $1,000 or something, which was the most we had ever raised for St. Jude's in one event. So it hit me. I was like, if I can dress up, put on a wig, and dance a little bit and raise money for charity, I'm a bad person if I don't. Right? Like let's do it.
Yeah.
So I started that more than a decade ago. So I do my next show that I have coming up is Drag Me to Church. Drag Me to Church, which is a interfaith Atlanta Pride official event where we will all come together, have an interfaith service, and it will all be led by drag queens. So yeah.
That is awesome. I know that you said like earlier on you kind of dived into religion as part of kind of like finding that community. How has that path changed or been influenced as you've kind of gone through? Because I know in a lot of places, religion's not always the most accepting. And then, there are certain churches and things that are much more accepting than others. But how has your journey been in that space?
Yeah, religion is difficult. And it was something that I was a part of from a very early age. My family was not. I wanted to find a place that I could be. My parents weren't religious until they needed to be nasty. They used religion that way. You can't be gay
Right.
because it says this, and I'm like, okay, I'm the one that goes to church and you don't. So like, let's figure it out. I at that point went to a Presbyterian church, and I loved my church, and I still am so lucky to have a few of them still in my life. But when I came out, they let me know that they love me, they support me, they know that this is who I am. But unfortunately, I no longer had a place at their church, and that they would be happy to find me a new church, but I wasn't really welcome there. That's kind of how I saw religion, and I really didn't want anything to do with it. We had visited
Hmm.
a few like MCC, gay churches, that kind of thing, but it wasn't until we got married and my uncle married us that my family's Lutheran. They've been Lutheran, for the last like decades and decades and decades and centuries, and that is important to my family, and it was important to my grandmother, and it was important to my mom. So when it came to get married, I wanted to do what my cousins did. And when we had Hunter, I was like, okay, I already have the pastor. I'm sure there's a Lutheran church in Atlanta. Well, I'll rent out the building, I'll throw a badass party, and I'll fly the pastor in, right? And I was informed that that's not, when you get baptized, you don't really get baptized just to get baptized. You get baptized into a church, like into a community. So the church was like, okay, so if you want your son baptized here, you need to come to church here. I had never been to a church like this. It was like the first time I had been to a church where we weren't the gay people. We were just normal people in the pews. Within the first few years that we were there, we had the first trans pastor in the Southeast in the Lutheran church. Our bishop for the Southeast Lutheran ELCA Synod is a gay man. My current pastor is a gay man, identifies as a gay man. We are doing drag queen service at our church. We are there to help the people, and we get it. Like, we get that the church is awful. Like, I was kicked out of my church, and it can be
Yeah.
triggering. But know that there's a place for you and that you were perfectly and wonderfully made. It's been really, really great for me. It's also cool. I don't know if my son's straight. I don't know if my son's gay. I don't know if he's a part of the queer community. I say he's a part of the queer community because he's from a queer home. But I don't know how he's going to be. But I know that I want him to be in a place where he sees everybody's accepting, and he knows that his God is a God of love, which
Yeah.
I think is really neat.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I think one huge thing that I have really paid attention to just in life in general is I feel like a lot of what children learn and a lot of negativity and hate that is spewed is usually taught. And so being able to really take a moment to just open up that space for everyone to learn, grow, develop is really, really interesting and, amazing for this church to be so accepting and so open to everybody, because I know that there's a lot of people out here that are religious in some way, shape, or form looking for that safe space to practice and to be a part of something. So it's amazing to see and gives hope, I think, to a lot of people listening, for being able to go out and find something like that.
I feel like, being from the South and having so many friends that were Southern Baptists, and you have to believe this, you have to believe that. My husband's full agnostic, right? Like, he's full agnostic. He sits next to me every Sunday. Not one person at our church would come down on him or tell him that he's wrong. Like, we come from a place of love. We love you for who you are. We love you for where you're at. And I think that's important, you know?
Yeah, I don't think people typically go to church strictly because they believe everything they hear. I think it's a space where they feel safe, they feel
Yep.
seen, they feel a part of something. And most people want to feel a part of something bigger than themselves,
I
right?
100% agree.
Yeah, so I think it really just opens that space for somebody, which, having a place so accepting, it's almost like even listening to you talk about it, I'm like, I've never seen a place like this. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people out there that will probably feel similar. And so just know that, like, you can go out and search for these places and they
Mhm.
do exist. And people are trying to be more inclusive and really working together, because I feel like we're coming to a point in reality where, like, we have to start banding together to lift each other up, to help each other's successes, to work with each other, because there's not an external force or person that's going to just make things happen for you just out of thin air, when you're like really against community as a whole.
I agree. Absolutely.
If you were to interact today with some young person that is questioning their identity, what do you feel like your conversation would be with that person?
I would encourage them to talk. I would encourage them to surround themselves with people who are like minded. I think that we're in a place right now for young people that you don't have to know what you are, right? Like, when I was young, you were gay or you were lesbian or you were bisexual. We have something called the queer community now. Like, just be you, right? Like, just be you. And there's spaces for you everywhere. And just figuring out where exactly that is. My son's elementary school has a queer group, which I think we've come so far. There's so many times that I feel like we're taking steps back, but I do think we need to celebrate how far that we've come. So just knowing that it is hard, but it will get better. And if you need help, you need to ask for it.
Yeah,
People are there, and don't be afraid to ask for it. People are there for you. So that's what I would say.
that's awesome. And I think most people can notice listening to the podcast, I typically refer to everybody as queer. I really focus on the fact that, like, we as a community are a group of people. I don't really care whether you're lesbian, gay, bi, trans, whatever. I feel like us as a community of queer people should all stand together. And so that's why you'll notice a lot of the time I refer to everybody as queer, because I think it's opening the eyes to, like, you don't have to figure out who you are in the queer space, but go meet people who you identify with in the things that they do, in the things that they are, in the way that they act, in the way that they do things. If you love to dance and you have just an inspiration to put on a wig and go do that, go do that. It doesn't matter what your identity has to be to do those things. Like, you don't have to be a gay man to be a drag queen. And
Yeah.
I think we see that has changed so much over time, but that's the reality, right? Like, there has always been drag kings and all of these things. Being able to, like, take this platform to open up people's eyes, we're all a part of this community. So we can all be together and help each other out. And I think it's awesome to really highlight communicating, talking to
And we're
people,
and
getting
we're
to meet
all
people.
we're all changing, right? Like, just like the things I was into yesterday are not the things that I'm into today. I'm lucky enough that I have a husband who sees that, knows that, supports me, and is there for me, and also lets me be myself, right? Like, we were in Key West and we met a lovely couple from Atlanta, and they used the term "don't yuck my yum," and I've never heard that. Apparently, like, it's a kink thing, a kink like term, and I love that. And I'm like so like lucky that I have a husband who doesn't yuck my yum. You know?
Yeah, I think, yeah, don't yuck my yum. That is my favorite thing, because in this community, a lot of people kink shame
Yeah.
in what people like. And so, we shouldn't yuck anybody's yum. They enjoy it, they're having fun, they like it. What you may like and not like does not, have to be said to other people.
Yep.
My favorite thing is if you like it, I love it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I don't need you to understand. Like, there's a lot of times people will be like, but aren't you married or aren't you? I don't need you to understand. Um, you know, if I want you to understand, great. If you're a part of it, maybe you should understand. Um, but I don't need to explain myself to anybody.
Right. And one thing I will kind of attach to that is being able to find somebody that supports you in those things
Yep,
is so
absolutely.
important. Congratulations on finding somebody that can deal with, everything you throw at them. And I think that that's part of it. It's like that person that comes into your life, and I'm going to get like a comment that says, you say this every episode. But it's very true. It's like somebody that comes into your life should be in addition to your life.
Yeah,
It shouldn't
yeah,
be like taking away from things that you like or hurting you from certain situations or stunting your growth in some type of way. It should be somebody that's like your number one fan, somebody that's like in the front row, cheering you on,
yeah.
helping you get there, helping you do your things. People say all the time that I'm a little crazy because like my partner just like packed up his whole life and moved to Puerto Rico with me. So, like people, we just do things and like
Yeah.
it's an experience, it's life. I think we cheer each other on. He's my number one fan. So, I think when we kind of find those people to bring into your circle, being able to open up to them, talk to them, communicate with them, just helps you further your career and your life and your whole situation.
I agree. Yeah, Britt and I are like so opposite. I see so many old couples, and they're you hear like, oh, my missing piece. Like we're perfect together. Britt and I are perfect together, right? But just because I don't like sci-fi, he loves sci-fi. He writes sci-fi. He's written multiple books. I've not read one of them. Not my thing. It's just not my thing, right? He hates country music. I love country music. Like I am in Nashville multiple times a year listening to country music. We can be our own people. Like we can be our own people, and it's important to find someone that lets you be your own person, who's there to lift you up and there to cheer you on. But they're not going to yuck your yum. They're not gonna, they're not
Yeah.
gonna say like you can't like that because I don't like it. I go to bed early because I like trash TV. Britt stays up playing video games. That worked for us, right? Like,
That is so funny. So I know that you brought up housewives and wanting to be a housewife. I too have a dream of being a housewife. That is like my number one dream. And hashtag Andy Cohen, if you're listening,
yes, please.
please bring me on to Housewives. Um, do you watch the entire franchise? Are you like attached to one housewife over the other?
Yeah, so I will tell you, we've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of the housewives in Atlanta just through our different connections. I stopped watching Housewives years ago, just because we've been on a few episodes and we saw how fake it is. Sorry, Andy. The secret's out. But so I go trashier when it comes to TV.
Yeah.
My favorite shows right now are like 90 Day Fiance. Yes, like all day long. My Girl Tammy, Thousand Pound Sisters, love it. Inmate to Roommate, Married, Love After Lockup. Those are like that gives me life. People ask about like, do I watch like $1 Million Listing or those types of things? Like, hell no. Like, I do not want to go to work. I do not
Yeah.
want to watch work when I get home. Like,
Yeah, I love 90 Day Fiance. I do still watch Housewives, and I'm very attached to Miami and Salt Lake City.
okay, I did go back to Salt Lake City because I love drama and I needed to see this like Shaw Amazing thing. So I did go back to that. I think Mary is crazy. I um yeah, so that's the last one that I watched.
Hey, I live for Mary Cosby. I'm
Oh,
like, this
wow.
woman is completely off the chain. She is living in her own world completely, and I live for it.
Not done. Britt and I have a joke like the TV show we haven't filmed yet is going to be like looking for a third or like from couple to
Okay, so it's gonna be like from couple to throuple.
from couple
That
to
show
couple.
gave me life.
Oh, is
That
that a real
show,
show?
Yes, from couple to throuple. Yes, that's a real show.
On what? Oh my gosh, I
Oh
don't
my
even.
God, I'm following the people from the show. I am addicted to
Are
from
they
couple
are
to
they
throuple.
lasting?
No.
Well, kind of how it worked for us
Well,
too. So
so I will say I don't think the couples went into couple to throuple with the right idea.
yeah,
Like one of the couples you can clearly see like was just a straight guy that wanted to sleep with two women at the same time
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
they slept with a new person every night.
yeah,
But then you saw people like really trying to. There is one couple that like they left early because they found their match and they were done and they're like they
yeah.
left.
Yeah, I see it work in our community a lot. I see that
Yeah.
there's really strong thruples. For us, it would have to be like the perfect fit. We've thought we had the perfect fit a few times, but at the end of the day, Brett and I have been together 16 years. Like he's my best friend, and I'm also a lot to deal with, right? Like I'm a lot to motherfucking deal with.
Yeah. I think this is my problem with some of the reality TV is like I want like real like can we go back to like Housewives when they were fighting each other? Remember like
Yeah, when
when
we're full
Monique grabbed
rosy party
Candace?
parts. Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're needing. I will add this. To the Housewives, I think Andy Cohen, you have dropped the ball on not having a gay housewives, like a queer housewives. I feel like
Yeah,
would
I
not.
don't know about your gay friends, but it sounds like an orgy, right? Like I feel like we've all slept with each other, so it's like it just is going to get really.
It has to be housewives kind of. So you have to like pick people from different groups
You would have to do like a flow chart.
and
I
bring them
feel like you would
together.
have to do like a large flow chart, you know?
You would have to do a very detailed chart. But if you pick the right people, it could be really, really
Oh
good
yeah,
and a
oh
little messy.
yeah,
Because you're gonna have to pick people that have slept together. Like that's just gonna
yeah.
make the season that much more.
Hell, they could do my group of friends. I feel like Lord Linda, I'll tell you, we messy, just messy. I have a group of how many queers? Um, Probably 15 of us, and one's on the outs because Britt and I were talking to him, and then it didn't work out.
Definitely casted. So
Yeah.
definitely casted.
Now we're in the midst of like the other friends being like, "Well, where does he fit in?" And, just messy, messy boots, girl, messy boots.
Yeah. Well, Andy Cohen, you already know you could start in Atlanta. There's a friend group that's out here, and we can get some people casted. Because
I
I
love it.
definitely, I feel like we'll be watching that
Yeah,
because it would be. I feel like genuinely a group of queer people just are gonna be more authentic on TV, even if like they're trying to like the production's gonna try to force you to do certain things. I feel like the queer people are just not gonna care.
yeah,
They're still
yeah,
gonna do what they want to do.
yeah. That's exactly how it is. We love big, we fight big. Yeah,
Right.
that's fun.
It'll be so funny. And then we can if he gets production going, he can use your vow renewal as the
Oh
new
my gosh, girl. Let me tell you,
just saying.
we're up to 150 people. We have 7 drag queens performing. We have a live performer. We have fireworks. We have 2 caterers. One for my son's party. He's having a party within a party. Girl, buckle up. Like I'm wearing full white that I have. With a vow. With a uh uh. What do you call it? You know, like you put
A
over your
veil?
a veil, a vow, veil that like a oh girl, just it's gonna be something.
Well, I'm gonna be on the lookout because somebody needs to go live at this
Look,
event. We
truly,
can
I'm removing the phones. I'm removing everybody's phones.
you
Uh,
could give one person access to
what?
go live. The camera person with a selfie stick
There you go.
walking
There you
around
go.
helping everybody go live. So to bring this podcast to an end, the only way we know how, who would you officially like to say girl bye to?
I would say girl bye to someone's with the initials BP. This girl, let me tell you, she was the girl who always tried to come between your ride or die and you. Honey, I pulled this girl under the bus so many damn times. And it's time to say girl bye. And it's time to let her go I don't fuck with you. You don't fuck with me. So stop sliding into the DMs, girl.
And that's on period. Uh, I thought you were gonna say BP like the gas station.
Honey, she's a bad still. Um,
Yes, she's an oil spill. She gotta go.
uh,
Let's clean her up. Take her out the ocean. We gotta get her cleaned up.
yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Girlbye today. I had an amazing time talking to you and getting to know a lot about your story and your journey. Everybody be on the lookout for all the amazing things coming from Josh here in the future. Anything you would like to add before we officially wrap this podcast?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, all of that. Feel free to look me up, Josh Petrie Realtor, and follow along with my crazy life.
Yes, definitely go follow our hopefully first queer housewife. Take a look at the comment section below the description. We'll tag all of his social media there on YouTube. And if you're not watching on YouTube and you're on Spotify, go over to YouTube and get all that information. So thank you again for joining us today. Join us here at Girlbye every Monday, 6 p.m., where we'll bring you a new episode with a new story and a new journey. And we will catch you on the next one.
Bye, friend.